Welcome to this explainer on the legendary Alfred Hitchcock. We're doing something really cool today. We're deconstructing his incredibly unique cinematic philosophy, and we're pulling our insights right out of those historic, fascinating conversations he had with French director François Truffaut. If you've ever found yourself wondering how exactly the Master of Suspense built those terrifying on-screen worlds, well, you're in the right place. We've got to start with this amazing paradox. In his actual everyday life, Hitchcock demanded absolute calm. He literally hated complications. He wanted a perfectly organized desk and famously claimed that when he took a bath, he'd clean up so meticulously you wouldn't even know anyone had been in the room. But this is the exact same guy who engineered some of the most chaotic, nerve-wracking nightmares ever put on film. It's a brilliant contradiction, right? How on earth did a guy so fiercely dedicated to order and control create cinema's absolute greatest nightmares? Actually, it was exactly because of that need for control. We're going to look at how he used these incredibly precise, almost clinical techniques planned out to the tiniest detail to completely hijack our emotions. Which brings us to Section 1, the logic of nightmares and filming deep-seated fears. To really get Hitchcock, you have to realize he just wasn't interested in filming everyday reality. He was filming the logic of his own darkest fears. He told Truffaut point blank, "I'm never satisfied with the ordinary." Normal, everyday situations, totally boring to him. Instead, he built his films around isolated people who are suddenly faced with intensely hostile elements. And if you think about it, that is the exact literal pattern of a nightmare. It's this lonely, dangerous world where everyday rules just go out the window. Moving to Section 2, Mastering Pure Cinema. Emotion over reality. Here's his core philosophy. For Hitchcock, the emotional truth of what you, the viewer, experience on the screen will always trump the physical reality of what actually happened on the set. He called this pure cinema. It's this idea of expressing raw emotion simply by assembling pieces of film, rather than just passively pointing a camera and capturing factual reality. He thought it was totally ridiculous when other directors expected the movie screen to look exactly like the physical set. A perfect example of this is the famous kissing scene in his movie Notorious. On set, Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman absolutely hated doing this. They felt incredibly awkward because Hitchcock literally forced them to walk all the way across a room, physically glued together, just so he could hold a super tight close-up on their faces. It was terribly uncomfortable for them. But Hitchcock didn't care about the actors' feelings. He wanted the camera to be a third party. He wanted to give us the incredible privilege of joining that embrace. And on screen, it absolutely works. It creates this brilliant, unbroken romantic moment, basically a temporary menage a trois between the two stars and the audience. Section 3, the illusion of violence and making the audience feel it. He treated violence the exact same way he treated romance. He knew that straightforward photographic reality is often completely boring. Look at it this way. If you film two guys fighting from far away, it's like watching a speeding train from 2 miles off. You don't feel a thing. But if you chop the action up into tight shots, a hand swinging, a face reacting, a leg kicking, and you edit them together with the right rhythm, you make the public physically feel every single hit. It's like standing right next to the tracks as that train roars past. He didn't want to just show you violence. He wanted you to physically experience it. Let's look at Section 4, this psycho experiment, a calculated nightmare. All of this mastery over pure assembly really peaked with his ultimate experiment, Psycho. Every single detail was heavily calculated for maximum psychological impact, right down to the buildings. He specifically hunted down this authentic California Gothic architecture for the Bates house. He wasn't going for some cheesy haunted house cliché. He wanted something real, but naturally brooding. And look at the contrast. You've got this imposing, vertical, old-fashioned house looming right over the flat, horizontal, modern motel. It instantly creates this thick, mysterious tension before anyone even speaks a word. And then there's the shower scene. Just think about the sheer scale of this for a second. 70 camera setups for a measly 45 seconds of footage. This is pure cinema at its absolute peak. Here's the wild part. The knife literally never touches the stand-in's body. It is 100% montage violence. He even shot pieces of it in slow motion just to safely cover the actress's body, and then sped it back up in the edit to look normal. He didn't film a real murder. He manufactured one out of 70 tiny scraps of celluloid. He pulled a similar stunt later on in the movie. When Detective Arbogast falls down the stairs, Hitchcock completely tossed physical reality out the window. If a stuntman falls down the stairs in real life, boom, it's over in a second, way too fast. So he broke it into 3 steps. First, he shot a dolly down the empty stairs. Second, he sat the actor in a stationary chair right in front of a transparency screen playing that stair footage. Third, he just had the guy wildly flap his arms. It totally elongates the moment, turning it into this horrifying, almost ballet-like fall that looked completely absurd on set, but is absolutely terrifying in the final cut. It works because he orchestrated these shots exactly like a composer writes music. During that staircase attack, Hitchcock actually compared his editing rhythm to musical instruments. He goes from this highly suspenseful, silent shot looking straight down, which he said felt like the high, tense hum of violins, and he cuts immediately to this brutal, massive close-up of the knife. And that cut, that was the clashing of brass instruments. It is literal visual music, designed to completely shock your nervous system. Section 5. Playing the audience. The peeping Tom complicity. See, the true genius of Psycho wasn't just the visual trickery. It was how he messed with our morals. It's wild how he strings the viewer along. He opens with an erotic scene, which was super rare back then, specifically to turn us into a bunch of peeping Toms. Then he hooks us on this girl stealing 40 grand and actually makes us hope she gets away with it. And then, bam, he kills off his huge Hollywood star Janet Leigh in the first third of the movie. We are completely unmoored. So what do? We actually transfer our loyalty over to Norman Bates. When he's mopping up the blood and sinking her car in a swamp, we are literally holding our breath hoping he pulls off the cover-up. Hitchcock forces us into this incredibly uncomfortable role of a complicit voyeur. It all boils down to this incredible quote. Hitchcock told Truffaut point blank that he didn't really care about the acting or the message or the subject matter of Psycho. He only cared about using pure film to trigger mass, uncontrollable emotion. He said, "I was directing the viewers. You might say I was playing them, like an organ." To prove it was all about his technical assembly, he even treated the entire movie like a logistical experiment. He decided to use a television crew and shoot the whole thing at lightning speed, just to see if he could pull off a feature-length masterpiece on a crazy TV schedule. And thanks to that ruthless efficiency, that perfectly organized desk mindset we talked about at the start, the whole thing was astonishingly cheap to make. It cost a remarkably low $800,000 to produce. And the payoff? It grossed an unbelievable $15 million, instantly becoming his biggest hit. It proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he was the absolute master of cinematic manipulation. People weren't throwing money at some massive, expensive epic. They were paying to be thrilled by the flawless, mechanical assembly of sights and sounds. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to chew on. We've seen how Hitchcock literally manufactured nightmares out of thin air, using nothing but scissors, angles, and carefully timed cuts to make us actively root for thieves and murderers. So if pure technical assembly can hack our deepest fears and our moral compass that effectively, if a director really can play us like a giant organ, are we ever actually in control of our own emotions when we sit down in the dark at the movies? Or are we just perfectly orchestrated instruments, waiting for the master to press the keys? Think about that the next time you put on a thriller. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.